Thanks for staying with News at Prime tonight. An Eastern Cape baby girl born with a medical condition called progeria has passed away. Baby Anotando died at the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital yesterday afternoon. That's where she's been receiving care since her 20-year-old mother gave birth to her in June. Her family confirmed the death to Newzroom Afrika. The Constitutional Court has found that a law that prevents a single father from registering his children's birth under his surname unfairly discriminates against unmarried men. Section 10 of the Births and Deaths Registration Act prohibited an unmarried father from giving notice of the birth without the consent of the mother. Joining us for more on this is family law expert Shando Theron. Good evening, Shando, and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, let's just begin with the history of this case and what really prompted this legal action.
Well, Kathy, what happened here is that the father was a South African citizen. He was married to a woman from the DRC. Her papers ran out for various reasons, so she was here undocumented. Their child was born, a baby girl, on the 1st of February 2016. And then because she was not documented and they were unmarried, and then he then wanted to register the birth of the child, and because of Section 9 and 10 of the Births and Deaths Registration Act, he was told, or Home Affairs refused to register the birth of his child, and also said that in terms of those sections, an unmarried father cannot register the birth of a child unless the mother is with him or unless the mother gives consent. Now, in this case, the mother couldn't give consent because she's undocumented, so she wasn't recognized by Home Affairs. And of course, that now placed the father in a conundrum where he could not register the birth of the child. He then approached the High Court in Grahamstown, and eventually the matter ended up in front of the full bench of the High Court in Grahamstown, who found that Section 9 and 10 were indeed unconstitutional, that they discriminated unfairly against fathers, and then the matter went to the Constitutional Court for the confirmation of this order by the full court, the full bench of the Grahamstown High Court, and indeed the Constitutional Court found that it was unconstitutional. There were two dissenting judgments that said that, and that was the ex-Chief Justice and Justice Mkhweng and Judge Matopo, that said that it is discriminatory, but this discrimination is justified in that they feared that people could register children that was not their own, and they said that that risk outweighed the discrimination.
Of course, part of what this judgment also speaks to is something that really is a function of society and socialization, and the extent to which married fathers have always been given preference where this is concerned. And of course, the assumption that, you know, they are more worthy of fathering their children than somebody who is an unmarried father.
Well, Kathy, I think you missed your calling. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It was, and the court says here, Section 10 unlawfully discriminates, and I'm quoting, against both unmarried fathers and children born out of wedlock on various grounds, with the result that children born out of wedlock are not able to fully realize certain constitutionally guaranteed rights. And it also said that why should the bonds of an unmarried father with his child be of less value than the bonds of a married father?
How do you expect that this is going to change things going forward, Shando? Oftentimes we hear about the struggles of men in a similar situation to the client in this instance, who want to register children under their names but simply can't do that because of the family relationships where, you know, families sometimes just make it difficult because of the, you know, the married and the not married, and perhaps even in some instances the extent to which they believe traditional culture or custom has been followed.
Well, Kathy, I think this is going to actually really a step in the right direction. And this is going to open the door for Section 21 of the Children's Act, I believe, to also be declared unconstitutional. Because Section 21 of the Children's Act discriminates on the very same grounds between married and unmarried fathers as far as their parental rights. And married father has automatic parental rights responsibilities, when unmarried father has to go to court and prove his parental rights. And on these very same grounds, the Constitutional Court said that this discriminates against unmarried fathers, it discriminates on the base of marital status, it discriminates on the base of sex, it discriminates on the base of gender. So, for instance, Section 21 of the Children's Act, I think when it is brought in front of the Constitutional Court, it will fall on the very same grounds. So I think this has certainly gone a long way to leveling the playing fields. There are certain, I think, safety checks that's going to have to be built into the Act, because I think the concern raised by the learned justices Mogoeng and Matopo, in that what is stopping a third party that's not the parent from registering a child and simply saying, I am the father. So there's certain safeguards will probably have to be built in, but I think this is definitely a step in the right direction.
The other issue that this particular case highlights is, of course, the plight of undocumented people in this country, and the extent to which then, they're being unable to have documents. Then, it sets a whole chain of events that not just affects them, but in this instance affects their children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this just once again highlights the plight of undocumented people in this country. It highlights the plight of undocumented women. And it just highlights the plight of the whole, as you say, the whole chain of people affected by certain bureaucratic rules. Now, of course, some of those rules are there for a good reason. But we see the law of unintended consequences. We can definitely work against the best interest of a child, and certainly work against the best interest of a family.
Is this one of those instances where we can say the law is actually advancing, moving forward, taking into account the changing nature of society?
Absolutely, where the law is certainly moving forward, taking account the changing nature of society, but also I think the changing nature of what we understand as a marriage. And I'm using the term marriage loosely, but not long ago, not too long ago, when I started practicing law, marriage was between a man and a woman. Now it has various different permutations, and rightfully so. And it's also family and the rights that a family that is attracted to a family and the best interest of a child, I think, should not be dependent on someone's marital status.
Shando, as a family law expert, it's one thing for the law to take a decision like this. It's a completely different thing in terms of how sometimes it's often implicated, because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with all sorts of different types of emotions involved in these scenarios. So how easy is it going to be in this case?
Look, fighting a case like this all the way to the Constitutional Court is a long process. It's an arduous process, but someone has to do it, and someone did it. This has now opened up the doors for unmarried fathers to register children, but importantly, register children in their surname. I have had many cases where the father was not placed on the birth certificate, and the family, as you rightfully pointed out, refuses to acknowledge the father as anything more than someone who pays maintenance. So this will certainly, I think, level the playing field, and I think this will make it a lot easier for other instances where people are discriminated against, especially fathers, as in Section 21 of the Children's Act. I think this case is really a step in the right direction, and has really opened up what I think will be possible in the future.
Family law expert Shando Theron, thank you so much for your time tonight.